All right, we are out here at our nearby test flight facility, the one, I guess, nearby our office or workshop. As you can tell, not the most ideal conditions or clear weather conditions, but that's exactly why we're out here, to test fly a Developer Mini. And if it's still raining and hopefully it picks up a little bit more, we can do flight testing with the Developer. So we had an old version of Developer. We called it 1.3. We're now on Developer version 2.0. And this is really the first version of Developer Mini as well, but essentially matches the Developer 2.0 version by and large. We just need to install a battery I have here in the back of my Lesbaru. And that's a lesbian Subaru, or Lesbaru for short. You have to be a lesbian to drive a Subaru. And I fit the bill oh so wonderfully. All right, probably not the best that I just held up the backside to the sky where the rain is falling from, but again, more testing. And if we get a little bit of water in either the USB-C connector or the power connector, and that's enough to cause a short in an event like this, then, or a day like this, then we clearly need to do some design update work. Continuing to rock the Michael Jackson aesthetic with the one glove as well. Not my best Michael Jackson impression. Not that any of them are all that great. No, did pretty good. Just getting me to do the moonwalk. That's when that's when my real Michael Jackson impression comes out to shine. All right, have the 4 props. Let's see. We do have a green connection with the MLRS radio. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, I was actually hoping for a little bit more rain than this, but again, don't necessarily have the right contacts within my Jewish brethren, or brotherhood, if you will. This is the most rain one Jew can call up. Well, the Developer Mini is covered in water, so I think we should still be able to see how well it performs for pretty much the whole duration of the battery is what we'll test and see if we run into any problems. And so this is kind of a endurance test to see how long the battery lasts in these sort of conditions, and it will also be good to fine-tune the battery parameters as well, because as we've talked about previously, there's a phenomena called voltage sag, which while the Developer is in flight, or in this case the Developer Mini is in flight, it's using more voltage than it would be using if it were just down on the ground like it is now. So once it lands, we'll actually see more voltage than what it was just reporting in flight. So opening up the iVue Robo Control app, let's just get to the flight. Shut up, Jacob, you've droned on enough. We have connection to 25 satellites, a fully charged battery. And let's just go ahead and set it into loiter mode. We already have the gamepad activated, arm, and just manually taking off. I thought I heard like some oscillations, but that was from the birds. So, birds squawking. They're singing in the rain while we're flying in the rain. We're flying in the rain. Wow, what a shot, Jacob. This is your great angle. Oh, I guess the camera's not even pointing at me anyway. Not for now. All right. And the rain has actually died down even more than what it was when we got here, but hopefully it'll pick back up. According to the forecast, it would. So if you're also looking at the screen here with the iVue Robo Control app open, you can see what I'm referring to. Almost immediately after we took off, the voltage number went from 16.5 volts roughly to about 14.8 volts. So it clearly hasn't used that much juice. Maybe I shouldn't say clearly, but it hasn't used that much juice. It's just very hard to get an accurate battery voltage while it's in flight. So that's why we do test flights like these, so we can kind of fine tune in the fail-safe parameters when the battery gets to a critical or low level, as well as if I rotate a little bit. So on my side I have a battery status light, and then I'm going to need to rotate a little bit more for the camera view. I think that should be good. So that battery status light will turn from green to yellow to red to flashing red based off of a voltage level. And again, as we just have talked about now for the last few minutes, the voltage sag can make that light color change quicker than what it needs to. So basically it'll turn to yellow when there's actually more than 50% battery, or it'll turn to red when there's more than I think it's 20% battery, roughly speaking, before it's supposed to turn red. And then I think 10% battery, maybe 15% battery, it turns flashing red. So again, we might just need to fine tune those values to more accurately reflect the actual voltage once Developer Mini has landed and has completely gone through the battery, not just as indicated, but in actuality. Looks like we have a big bird incoming, and not the kind, the yellow one from Sesame Street. And of course, there is now no rain, so this kind of defeats some of the tests I was hoping to accomplish out here today. But if nothing else, you'll see how long a Developer Mini can last in flight, at least with our current battery fail-safe parameters set. And again, those might need fine-tune just to maximize the flight time. Of course, without getting too low that it's gonna jeopardize the longevity of the battery. And now we're getting a little bit of mist again. Hopefully this picks back up. Said no one ever. Who actually calls for more rain or wants more rain for flight testing? We do today. It's kind of what I was banking on. We're not flying or singing in the rain. Flying in the mist. It's definitely wet. I definitely did not forget to cinch up the Velcro strap on the Developer Mini there. All right, so the battery status lights are starting to flicker, so it's right on the border between green and yellow. And you may notice that Developer Mini is keeping its position fairly well, at least horizontally speaking. It is drifting up and down a little bit vertically. That's perfectly standard for just GPS-based positioning. And if you've seen some of our previous videos with another one of our Developer Mini, we have an optical flow sensor, a here flow specifically, and a Terra Ranger time of flight or LiDAR sensor downward facing to help keep a more steady position, both horizontally as well as vertically. Well, I just fell another raindrop, so hopefully we're getting another shower come through. And hopefully this is more indicative of the types of rain people will be flying in if they need to fly in the rain. Because you should avoid it wherever possible, but of course if you're already out doing a mission and it starts raining, you want to be able to verify your Developer Mini is going to hold up. And then we have a developer to duplicate this test with as well. So we have never flown Developer Mini in the rain, at least as I can recall, at least for any sort of standardized or formalized testing. Where we have done so with the Developer, it's been quite some time. Again, I mentioned an older version. We flew it for more than 20 minutes in one flight when we were using smaller capacity batteries, and it was sub 40 degrees, I think even near or sub freezing 32 degrees in Fahrenheit, freedom units. And it was, again, not just rain, but like sleet. So a little bit of snow mixture in there as well, and it held up just fine. Now we have also built Developer models both internally for test units, and some of the first units that we sold for customers actually had laser cut gaskets, like foam gaskets that went around the top cover. That's actually when the top cover was still held in via 8 Phillips head screws instead of the latch-based system that we use now. And then we also had that for the side plates, again, when the side plates were held in via screws. But now we're just trying to see, even though Developer or Developer Mini, again in this case, is not IP certified, how well it holds up in the rain. We're getting wet, ladies and gentlemen. Going to come down in altitude just a little bit. Snuck up in altitude a little bit more than I would like. But again, it's all within what would be normal for any sort of GPS drone. Maybe not including a drone with a RTK GPS, but typically you're looking at a $300 or so GPS unit versus these about $40 or so. Now we have found one RTK GPS unit that's about $80. Haven't had really much, if any, success integrating it with any of our Developer units, so that may be something we can revisit as a more affordable option, both for us to standardize as well as for anyone that wants to do their own DIY modification or upgrade to a Developer. I don't think that RTK GPS would work too well on a Developer Mini, just form factor wise. And so now I think you should be able to see the battery status lights. They just transitioned from yellow to red. They're tranny lights. And it looks like it's still kind of in that transitionary stage and the hormone blocker stage. And it's starting to rain a little bit more. May not be able to tell on camera, but I am indeed getting wet. I'm so tempted to just try to cinch up that Velcro strap mid-flight, but as stupid as I may look, I'm not that stupid on camera, at least hypothetically or allegedly speaking. Just dumb enough to walk right around the spinning props at eye level, you know, if there's any glitch, there goes my eyesight. My superhuman eyesight, or at least last time it was tested, superhuman eyesight. With 2020 being perfect vision, I had 2010 in one eye at one point, I think my left eye, and 2015 in my right eye. All right, this is a more consistent rain now. Still not a heavy rain. I don't think I ever finished that game for any of you gamers out there, but fairly interesting story-based game where it was more like an interactive movie from what I recall. Back on the days of a PlayStation 3, which is now considered retro console gaming. I think Developer Mini is holding up in the rain better than I am. Let's see, there's not too much rain getting in the trunk, getting all the junk in my trunk wet. What you gonna do with all that junk? All the junk? I'm gonna get you drunk off my humps. Back when the Black Eyed Peas were, you know, pre-woke, when they had songs called Retarded instead of Let's Get It Started or Let's Get Retarded. And the bass keeps running in. In this context, there's no disrespect. My favorite has to be probably Where Is the Love, though. That's just such a powerful message. Still just as much, if not more relevant as it's ever been. According to the iVue RC app, we have 83% battery. I need to coordinate with Mohit and see how we come up with that percentage value, because I don't think that's correct. If we were to minimize here and do LiPo, battery. Hey, stop looking at my search history. God. This is a pretty good chart. Let's see. Can we look at that? So we have a 4S battery. We are, as you can see, there's no way we're at 10%. At least if Developer Mini operates correctly, it would have already landed by now if that were the case. We're indicating 13.3 volts, but I venture to say we're still in like the 15 volt range. And I think the screen recording on here stopped, which, man, that's kind of annoying. And by kind of annoying, I mean really annoying. So disregard, you know, all of the comments I made. I think I only made a couple comments about following along on the screen here, which seems like the screen recording stopped at some point. Getting another sync. Let me do that without talking as well. All right, just for some basic, I guess, drone 101 information. Hovering here is not necessarily the most efficient way to test the battery or to get the most battery life out of a flight. It's actually, you know, kind of slow level flight is going to be what's the most energy efficient, and then ascending or descending is going to be the most energy consuming. So doing a hover is kind of a good way to kind of get a middle ground of how well a battery is going to perform. Maybe less so than just doing a continuous waypoint mission, but again, I think this more than serves the purpose for this sort of endurance testing, as well as just seeing how well it holds up in the rain, which has kind of died back down a little bit after it picked up a little more for a while. What would be most ideal, even though if we just land Develop Air Mini, we should be able to get a fairly good voltage reading after Develop Air Mini lands in the iVue RC app, but I should have brought out what's called a watt meter, a physical hardware device I could plug up to the battery and see what the voltage is post-flight. Because again, we'll land with, let's say, as indicated here in the iVue RC app, it'll land at about 11.5 volts, maybe 11 volts, let's say. But then once we actually have it land and let it wait for a while, so the motors that are spinning the props, keeping Develop Air Mini in flight, aren't actively using the voltage, we'll actually see that voltage number go back up. And again, the voltage sag I've been talking so much about. And that's why even with DJI, you can see the variable battery life, you know, up on at least the Go Fly apps that I hypothetically used to use. I was never a sellout using, you know, DJI Chinese drones, let alone, you know, Chinese components in our own drones. But if I were, the same problem exists pretty much even in EVs. I was going to point out that car, not an EV. You know, it depends all on how you're driving it. The range is going to fluctuate, and it can quite substantially. Yeah, I was looking to see if the screen recording was still going, because we would be able to see how long we've been in flight, which is a feature of Q ground control that we really should implement, but work in progress, people. Okay, so I'm full screen and still screen recording. So I wonder why the screen recording stopped previously. Maybe I accidentally selected the stop icon. How long have you been rolling, Brian? There's no way for you to see? I think I've asked that before, and I think you already told me no. Someone telling me no, and then me continuing to ask and push for more and more. Doesn't sound like me. I mean, Develop Air Mini is like covered in water on the outside, so I think despite it not being the most heavy rain, you can still see Develop Air Mini may not be waterproof, but you know, just about weatherproof, or at least light weatherproof, weather resistant. He was so enamored. He was like, oh my God, I need one of those drones. So we've been almost going 6 minutes since we started recording the second screen recording. You guys will, of course, be able to know better than I do watching how Develop Air Mini, how long Develop Air Mini has been flying at this point. But I'll venture to say, if it hasn't been 20 minutes, we're fairly close. We're going to bring it up a little bit just because I want to be able to have a better idea of when it actually initiates landing mode just by looking at it. But I don't want it to get too high either. Not without me, that's not fair. Still tempted to get that Velcro strap. I think I'm messing with the barometer. I've noticed, and it could just be coincidence, as I get closer, it seems Develop Air Mini is rising, which there's not any sort of vision or light-based sensor to help it detect I'm there, but the way that it maintains altitude other than just using GPS is an internal barometer, so it can get the atmospheric conditions around it to have an idea of how far above the ground altitude is the known like terrain ground altitude. AGL, above ground level. Now I could be wrong about this. I think the barometer is actually relative to mean sea level, but then in RGCopter they have terrain data. And so I think they do some sort of use some sort of algorithm. I don't know. Clearly not the technically savvy one here, folks. More the test dummy, as we covered in our last video, or one of our last videos. Marketing, sales, test dummy, and the unfortunate reality is these Develop Air don't build themselves, or I don't like to say it, but yeah, I say I like to say it, that these drones don't build themselves, or these Develop Air don't build themselves. So I'm actually also our go-to production guy, at least for the time being. Hasn't always been the case, but with our team right now, most of our technical folks are best suited on the R&D front, where I'm not really well suited, other than just giving direction. And, you know, editing, refining, and sourcing, but no one does quite as good of a job, believe it or not, as I do as far as building one of these Develop Air Mini to a way that, one, is going to reflect positively upon us, but then two, just as, if not more importantly, work really well for our customers, as well as a development drone can, right? Uh-oh. That was a bad idea. Let's just hope that doesn't blow up now. Oh man, what was I thinking? Clearly wasn't. Trying to make an literally on-the-fly adjustment. Who could have thought that would be such a bad idea? Oh my goodness. Let me double check what it's indicating here, and we're still screen recording. We've been flying over 10 minutes as part of this screen recording, so I would venture to say we're coming up on 25 minutes on this battery, and we're indicating 10.9 volts, so yeah, we should be getting fairly close to the automated landing. And again, hopefully that's set properly, right? I should have probably double checked beforehand, but why we do test flights. For a second, I thought we had definitely not one of those Honda guys come and check out what we're doing, but he was quite a ways away, just seemingly walking this way. Told me to walk this way. We're flying in the rain. And the rain's picked back up again, and probably just as heavy, if not heavier than it's been at least since we've got here. And there it goes into land flight mode, ladies and gentlemen. Yep, and you would have been able to follow along. So look at that. Again, doing it with no hands, Ma. So let's let it just sit here and we'll see what that voltage number climbs back up to. Although you guys will be able to have a better judge. So it was definitely under 10.8 volts last time I looked, and now it's climbing back up to about 11.5 volts. But let's keep it plugged in and let's see how high that gets before it stabilizes. And then we'll replicate this test with a full-size developer. And more singing in the rain. So, yeah, it looks like we're getting up to about 11.5 volts, which that's actually fairly low for this battery. I will do another measure with a watt meter once we get back to the workshop with this battery. But if we were to go back to the LiPo battery voltage chart here, 4S, I mean, yeah, we're down under 0%, and that's not really the case. I would, damn near bet my life on it. So, nonetheless, let's go ahead and take off the props of this Developer Mini. I will either report back from the office or maybe in the next video, maybe just as a quick little on-screen graphic or something, you'll see what the recorded voltage is for this battery. But in any case, you can see it brings itself back down before it's completely dead. So that's it for you, Developer Mini. Just want to make sure Brian, our camera guy, wasn't packing up prematurely. And actually, you know what? Let's get a quick little look so you guys can see this is not movie magic. Not that, we would take all the time to animate this sort of rain and the water simulation. But yeah, you can see, Developer Mini is, completely covered in water from the outside. So I don't, of course, want to open up the top cover while it's actively raining, but that's something else I'll report back on once we're in the workshop, or at least in our next video, if nothing else. All right, we'll set that Developer Mini down and we'll get this Develop Air here prepared. I'm going to go around here, and I think I need to grab a power extender for this battery. Assuming I did actually bring it, which there's quite a good possibility I did not bring it. Yeah, it looks like I did not bring. Nope, it's right there. I lied, people. Very intentionally lied. No, kidding. And you know what? We'll go ahead, disconnect. All right. And we still have a light rain, or a baby rain, if you're familiar with the term from manned aviation. Prop on, give me some more, prop on. Name that tune. I just butchered. It's Smack That by Akon. Jacob, you listen to Riff Raff? Not really, but some songs from elementary school live rent-free in my head, at least at times. Your parents let you listen to that Riff Raff in elementary school? Yeah, my parents believe in freedom. Except Grand Theft Auto. When I was in elementary school, we couldn't have Grand Theft Auto. We could play at friends' houses, but it wasn't until middle school we were allowed to have Grand Theft Auto. You know, that's when we were of appropriate age to start beating up hookers in virtual worlds, taking their money. Jokes, people. I was about to say, we're not getting satellite information. What sort of horseshit is that? All right, we're in loiter mode, and similarly, just like the Developer Mini, we should just be able to arm drone. Maybe. Error while sending command. Arm. Nope. We might need to do a compass calibration. Let me check Q ground control, see what messages, if any, we're encountering there. False alarm, as you can clearly tell. Let's see.
Under flight mode. GCS failsafe cleared.
So we have connection to 28 satellites with this standard GPS unit, which is pretty spectacular. This is an older M8N GPS unit in the base model developers.
Compass is inconsistent.
All right, it looks like we might have to do a compass calibration, but nothing we can't do. All right, I am going to unplug this from the battery. Hopefully maintain this to where then I can get it positioned here and curiously move it over there with me to do the compass calibration. And we can dance on the way. feel like Jeremy Renner, the bomb locker. The hurt locker, the bomb locker. Let me also go ahead and vehicle or plan flight. I'm getting rid of the plan that's already saved on here, so in case it's accidentally triggered, we're not flying over to the drone park or Fowler Park or wherever we last flew this develop air. And the cursor's glitching out a little bit thanks to the rain. All right, compass is inconsistent, vehicle configuration, sensors, compass. And again, very similar to what you would have to do with a DJI. It's just we don't actually have the compass calibration UI in our iVue RC app, so we're having to use Q ground control and open source application. So, all right. Let's see how well that did. The battery slid around a little bit more than what I would like. Yeah, both of those are in the red. We're gonna go ahead and hit OK. Perimeters, tools, reboot. And we're gonna have to redo that compass calibration because I suck.
Stabilize flight mode.
And you know, it's funny, this is with a RTK GPS. So, oh, and that's why we have so many satellites. So disregard my previous statement where I was surprised by how many satellites we were connected to. All right. See if I hold the battery better in place, if we can get a good, better readout. And now I do have my smartwatch on as well. Definitely not my sellout first generation Huawei smartwatch back when you could buy a Huawei phone when Google was using them as their manufacturer for the Nexus 6P. That's going to be an awful compass calibration, and if not, I'm going to be surprised. Yeah, that was much worse than the previous one. Let's reboot again. All right, third time's the charm, as they say, right? Let me see if I actually take off my smartwatch. That's going to be the deciding factor here. Making beautiful faces while I'm doing it as well. Which of my faces isn't beautiful? No. Man, that external compass is doing god awful. You willing to give it a shot doing a compass calibration?
Compass calibrated requires reboot.
When the test dummy isn't good enough, you have to invite over the camera person, producer. All right. Reboot. Hold on, not quite yet. All right, and go for it. I also blame having the props on. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. We're almost done. And hopefully you get a better compass calibration than I get. One's still in the red. For the purpose of this test, but that's the external one, that's the better one. We're gonna roll with it anyway. Yeah. if it looks like it's going haywire, we'll land it
Stabilize flight mode.
pretty close to immediately. And that's assuming that it'll allow us to take off and say we have a good quality compass, which doesn't look to be the case. I might also need to switch the orientation of the battery, but no, it looks like we're gonna be allowed to take off.
Loiter flight mode.
Nope, so
Need position estimate.
we should have,
GCS
oops.
failsafe cleared.
There we go. All right, so let's close out of Q ground control. I really don't like being this close, but I'm a man, right? Oh, I didn't close out of Q ground control. Silly me. Yeah. All right. Well, here goes nothing. Oops. Full screen. Arm. And we're starting at 27 minutes in. At least on the screen recording, or 3:51. All right. And this was a fully charged battery as well. So we'll see how well not only a full-size Develop Air, which does actually have a 4-port side plate on the rear open, see how much water, if any, gets in there. And then, of course, also see just how long of a flight time it gets in these conditions with the current battery status level, which I can already see needs to be adjusted a lot more on the Develop Air. We just took off, you know, with a fully charged battery, and the battery status lights are yellow, so we need to update that code. And believe it or not, people, that's something that I might even be able to do myself. I'll still probably delegate it, but that's one of the few feats of software editing that I'm capable of, at least with my current skill level. All right. And let's go ahead, move this to the back of the Subaru, where the Lesbaru. And we're gonna bring this Develop Air closer as well. Now this Develop Air should actually be set to do a return to landing when it gets down to about 30%. So we'll probably just cut it there and then adjust the values for the battery fail-safe after we correct them just for the low value, not the critical value. See, who needs a good quality compass calibration anyway, right? I know a bunch of you nerdy Arducopter development folks are raging right now. Oh my God, that's not safe to be flying! Oh! Meh, 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 meh. I'm just hating. I used to have fun driving a Nissan 370Z that my dad was a big brain genius for letting me to drive back in high school. Always was super responsible. Never got caught skipping school in it and burning out of a nearby gas station. So in theory, we should see develop air hover with a better vertical stability than what we were witnessing before, a better vertical positioning. And that's because of the RTK GPS. But again, GPS is still only good within centimeters with the right like base station sort of equipment. But otherwise you have many feet, if not even a couple meters or more of variance, especially, you know, vertically is about double the range that you can expect to see from the horizontal variance. I think the Legion's still getting wet in here. Moving that up a little bit. Hopefully not gonna accidentally disconnect the radio. Nice. The telemetry radio. So we're already seeing a transition from yellow to red. But with this base model develop air, we should be at least seeing 25 minutes if we were to use the full flight of develop air. And actually, if not 30 minutes, damn near close to 30 minutes. I know we've been able to get over 25 minutes on the older base model version of develop air with 9-inch propellers, or they might have been 9.4-inch propellers. Yeah, that were standard on many of the DJI Phantom models. This is using 10-inch propellers now as standard, the base model develop air. So you can see it has drifted quite a bit downward. But again, without having any sort of optical flow or really rangefinder, that's about as good as it gets with GPS. We won't use 32 minutes. I was just warned that we are limited on, is that record time or is that battery time? Okay. We have plenty of record time, but not so much battery time on the camera, so note that we should need to use all of it. He has 32 minutes and we have 32 satellites. Look at that. Now the smart, thing to do, the smart action to take would have been when I had Q ground control open, check the failsafe parameters for this develop air if they're still on the standard default parameters that anyone receiving a develop air would receive. But again, we're out here testing, so we'll see once it gets to a low level if it triggers the return to launch. And if it does, it will shoot up to, I think 150 feet is the default altitude we have set for RTL. And then it'll be interesting to see if by the time it reaches the launch location and comes back down, if it still has enough battery to complete the landing. Because we got the values wrong previously. Actually, we were delivering one of these develop air with a thermal camera and it fell from like 6 feet off the ground, and luckily the thermal camera was all right, just had to rebuild the develop air and then adjust the fail-safe parameters, so there's a little bit more reserve in the battery than what was previously set. And of course you can override it, so even with these fail-safes, it's not completely foolproof if you're trying to eke out every last metaphorical inch of the battery. All 4 or 5 inches of the battery available, but when isn't 4 or 5 inches of battery enough? another interested bystander, with a Steak and Shake milkshake, a subpar milkshake compared to Jake Shakes. I make the best milkshakes in all of the land. It's not even up for debate. We just don't make the best drones, we make the best milkshakes. They bring all of the boys to the yard. And damn right, they're better than yours. I could teach you, but I'd have to charge. My milkshakes bring all the boys to the yard. Damn right, they're better than... My drone flight brings all the cars to the flight field. Getting a pretty good rain now. Still not what I would consider a heavy rain, but you know, maybe a nice moderate rain. And I'm sinking in the rain. I'm sorry to all your eardrums people. Not enough to, you know, stop being me, but not even for moments of a time for, you know, our flight test videos. I would think this is about where we would start to see it do a RTL, but let's see, 351, no, it's only been 10 minutes, or 350, I don't know. We'll find out, won't we? And hopefully it comes down in a controlled manner, you know, hopefully, right? If not, I'm within, you know, diving, catching range. Now the other question is, are we going to have enough space on this Legion for the screen recording? Or am I going to have to, you know, rage out again for having to go recover it, luckily from the temporary files folder? You know, hypothetically speaking. I am always cool, calm, and collected. All right, so it just triggered RTL mode, even though it did not switch on the UI. Mohit, that's something that we need to... Oh, it went into smart RTL mode. That's what we have it set to, I bet. Let's see, if I go to drone modes, open menu. Yeah, it's in smart RTL mode. Look at that, people. That's even better than what I thought we had it set as. So rest assured, however long this flight was, there is still plenty of battery left in this, still plenty of juice left in this battery, I guess is a better way to say it. Again, this develop air is pretty thoroughly soaked from the top cover perspective. So it did well throughout the duration of its flight. Let's give it a little bit of time to see if the voltage will increase in the same way it did with the develop air mini. And you'll hopefully now by the end of this video understand what I've talked about so much with the voltage sag to estimate the battery life and the percentage and give you a voltage readout. So yeah, we're back up to 14.5 volts, so there's still plenty of flight left in this battery, but I think we proved out develop air, whatever you want to call it, weatherproof, weather resistant. You know, feel free to test it out yourself. Show us develop air flying in much more horrid conditions than these, but I think that's a great test flight, great way to end it for the day. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave those in the comments below, or of course reach out directly. Be more than happy to help as I can, especially as you want to upgrade or modify a develop air of your own. And of course they're available to buy from the iVue Robotics website, so you know, get to it, people. I don't know what you're waiting on, but you know, the future of American drones isn't going to build themselves, and you know, we can use all the help that we can get. So thanks for watching. You'll catch at least me, maybe us, in the next video, and peace.